right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Blowback Roundtable. I went ahead and started the live stream because the backstage discussion was so good. We were already having a lively discussion, and it was time to start the program. We just were here on Tuesday, and we haven't had a lot of things going on since then. But a few things have happened. I don't know if we want to touch on those items first and then see where we want to go from there. Um, I know there was the big Blinken visit to Ukraine.
It might launch an interesting ideas of discussion or anything. I can share with you a little slide because that's where a title comes from, which was Cemeteries and McDonalds. And the first images and videos of this visit, announced once he's there, were ridiculous. I mean, the big head, small face, I think that's Kuleba, right? Or was it another one? Yeah, I think that's Kuleba. He actually took her to a Kiev cemetery for that as a first thing to have, I don't know, solemn faces there, or I have no idea how this propaganda is supposed to work. We're going to be with you to the end, and we're looking at hundreds and thousands of dead, and then to a fucking McDonald's, which in Hungary, all right, 1990s, maybe 2000, it was a status symbol. We're going to the big Western place, but right now, it's if you want to be cheap. I guess it's the same in the US, isn't it? I mean, we're going to get fries in McDonald's, and only then did he go to Bankover Street, which is the residency of Zelensky, where he just stared there and announced the big new additions, billions from the US, another couple of billions of stolen Russian assets to being transferred for the first time. He made a big deal out of it, and that was one of the big meetings in the world. In the meantime, you have to know that ASEAN is also taking place, where Russia, as you can see, is in splendid isolation, no friends in the world. That was in Jakarta, Indonesia. Xi Jinping didn't go. He never goes to ASEAN. Putin did not attend, but Lavrov, as you can see, did. Biden skipped it as well, but sent Kamala. So I'm guessing we're going to have some nice speeches out of that one. But Lavrov's already left. He's in Bangladesh, in Dakar, I think, and talking about grain deals, long-term stuff. But since Tuesday, that's basically the summary of the main events that happened. Obviously, this weekend, we're going to have the G20 summit in Delhi. Obviously, a multitude of things, but it all feels like so desperate to me, especially if you go to this ridiculousness. I mean, I don't know. It's like the grand finale to me.
I'm thinking there's not a good way to promote what's going on in Ukraine. There's no good PR spin to it. And so I think they settled on what they settled on, some solemnity, about the righteousness of their cause by visiting a cemetery. And then, what's more Western than McDonald's? It's
that's it. It's just an icon, isn't it? It's a token.
That's right.
But I mean, it's a celebration of the closeness of the West with Ukraine. I mean, I'm assuming that's what they're thinking. And again, to me, it's revolting optics. Both of those were revolting, but I think they're pandering to a certain demographic that has a certain mindset where they like the West, and they think their cause is righteous. But I mean, to me, it's a terrible look. There's no good way to spin this, and that they're just doing their best.
Yeah,
I mean, in my long history in the Washington area, sometimes these PR situations arise, and I can't tell if somebody down at the State Department is having a laugh, some lesser people, or and it's a gruesome laugh in this case, or if this is just the usual, we don't pay attention to anything we say or think, and that's why. Because look at what is a McDonald's hamburger? It's ground meat. What was the euphemism used for the way the war of attrition was going for the Ukrainians? Meat grinder.
It is, and they called it that too, not just.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
not just so we can.
I think subliminally somebody in Washington, beside myself, because I'm no genius, figured that connection out and said, well, why don't we send up that fucker Blinken, because he's barking. Apparently he has a really nasty personality. He's a fucker, and I hate working for him. Why don't we send him over with this connection? Let's connect them up with a cemetery full of battered bodies, and then send them to a place where they take dog meat and grind it up and put it between a bun, in at least in America, and serve it to people so that they die sooner than they were supposed to die. Because it's that this guy,
I like this theory.
belabor this too much, but there's a guy who's done several films, and they're brilliant little films, where he only eats McDonald's for a month, for example.
Yeah.
And he suffered permanent liver damage.
Mm.
1
Oh,
month.
the early days of the internet, there was this. I remember.
Yeah. So it all
And
connects to me. The superficiality, the attrition of capital over everything else, over human life, all of that. It's all wound up. That's the message that Blinken managed to send. And he may be too stupid to know he sent it, but I
Yeah.
have a feeling there are some people down there that handle the itinerary, and they said, I hate working for this motherfucker. Let's stick it up his ass.
The close up.
It was shabby.
I love
The
this
close up
theory.
showed him eating fries. I didn't ever see him actually eating a hamburger. It was
That's
the
true.
Ukrainian potatoes. But no, that's a good point, Carlo.
Yeah.
Who do you think has more disgruntled employees, Kamala or Blinken? I know they both have horrible personalities. It's from all staffers that get fired. They say they can't work with people like them.
Hard to say. I think they all have horrible. Could you imagine working for Victoria Nuland?
Jesus, no.
Oh,
No. I
God.
choose death.
I
But
couldn't
the
imagine
analogy,
having those jobs. Those jobs have to be so stressful. I mean, you can't you can't be honest about anything. You can't
Yeah,
ever
and
say
they
what's
absolutely
true.
don't give
Yeah.
a fuck about the lives of Ukrainians. That's perfectly obvious. I mean, they're rounding up people in Europe. What's gone viral on Telegram and some X channels is the Ukrainians stuck. They escaped to the West, and some people in Germany, some people in Poland, they got their letters saying you went illegally, and sooner or later the Interpol will be tasked with rounding them up and sending them back home. One nation's going to have two nations are going to have an influx right now of people looking for safety. That's going to be Belarus and Russia, because they won't extradite. And a third one just emerged today, which was Austria. That surprised me. Our little brother to the northwest, very, very tiny country. So maybe Vienna is going to do a extradition thing. But they know these people, they have been in the West. They didn't want to fight a war. And they said, I don't want to be sent to the grinder. And they say this it's translated. Sometimes they speak English, these expats, but these videos are everywhere, and they're horrifying. What the lengths these people would go to,
And you
What did they
there's-
first do? Just send us aid, we got everything else. Just send us weapons, we got everything else. Now send us Ukrainians because
and
we
you
don't have
can't
anything.
blame them. You can't. I mean, the guy, Ukrainian soldier, recently was interviewed who was on the front line, and he said 90% of the people around him are going to be dead within days. I mean, this whatever he said, it was of that nature. There 90%, 9 out of 10 are going to die.
I don't remember where I read this, but the title was "We Are Ready to Die," and yeah, we're
Yeah.
probably gonna.
So Ukraine announced a big another mobilization, a major mobilization, like 300,000 people. This is going to include women. It's going to include people that were previously exempt. So people with minor mental, cognition problems, minor disabilities. They're no longer exempt. So it's
people
it's
going for a
really-
second degree, so students. But yeah, go on.
No, yeah, it's unconscionable. It's reprehensible. And so people are trying to avoid it. People that already went to Europe, yeah, they're going to be rounded up eventually, perhaps, and forced to, go get killed on the front lines against Russia in this senseless thing.
Yeah, Transcarpathia wasn't enough. The Donbas regions where there are still Ukrainian rule, that wasn't enough. Putting people in cars. Everybody's seen at least 10 of these videos, just grabbing them off the street. Now we have to go to external sources. On the bright side, news I just read somewhere. This was sports news, which I don't regularly follow, but 2 Ukrainian football players who played for the national team in Portugal and Spain haven't returned with the national team. And they are now on the list that Ukraine calls the runaway athletes. So there are people taking this last kind of opportunity to just, okay, that's me, guys. I had enough. Go.
But I have the experience with the Vietnam War, to compare. And here in this country, as soon as conscription came about, then that was when people got educated. That's when they started to learn about what was actually happening. Uh,
Yeah, no
and
anti-war before then, eh?
and of course it was only the MAGA people that were ninnies and didn't learn anything, and and they were sent in large numbers because you can look at the numbers. A lot of people from small Midwestern towns, add them and African American kids who had no other choice but to get rounded up. But I don't see that among the Ukrainian people by and
No,
large, and maybe we're being shielded from that, or maybe they're being shielded from the information
the
generally
second.
necessary to to get out in the streets in the same measure, because this is far more horrific than what was happening to American kids during Vietnam. The U.S. only lost 58,000 troops over its entire, I guess the 10 major years it was there
Yeah,
in Vietnam. So they, I mean,
there was
Ukraine is well beyond that in a year.
500,000 is the official Western, I think, mainstream. I'm not sure if it's New York Times or what, but no, it was one of these, not Newsweek. National Interest or something said 500,000 dead Ukrainian. Is it enough? Apparently not. That was the title. So this is far, far more than all the people died in Vietnam. And obviously, just to bring another point in here, the optics matter more. They always have. Have you guys sort of read up on the new defense minister since Oleksiy Reznikov has been dismissed by Zelensky on charges of corruption? But there was no investigation, but charges of corruption. And they put this new guy, this
Yeah, I've heard he's got no
Yeah.
military experience.
Zero. He was in charge of the state property fund of Ukraine, which is exactly the stuff that gives away public treasures to private entities like BlackRock and these foreign big corporations. He was in charge of that. So talk about corruption. But I went in the Wayback Machine to check out his Wikipedia. About 2 weeks ago, it didn't say a lot about his Muslim or so-called Crimean Tatar background. He was born in oh Jesus, I forget which SSR, but I failed to prepare for this one. But he was solely put there. The headlines came out from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the CIA American stuff. That look, the Jew puts
Indigenous Crimean.
Sorry.
He's an indigenous Crimean was the talking point, right?
Yes, and hello, Real Truth Talk. Good morning. No, I was gonna.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
But there was no real mention of him. But when the headlines came out in the West and the CIA press is, look, the Jew puts a Muslim in charge of national defense, further undermining the Russian claim that it's a Nazi regime. That was all that it was for. And on the second day of business, he's already under anti-corruption investigations by the anti-corruption court in Ukraine. So Maria Zakharova had some choice words on it, but that matters much more than 17 to 60-year-olds, I think, who can now be wound up in Europe to be sent to die.
Now you can make a case for geography and nationalism, because the difference between Vietnam and Ukraine, there are some stark differences. Obviously, you had to sell people in the United States to travel halfway around the world to stop communism, which is a much more cerebral, if you want to call it that, exercise. But I personally don't understand the Ukrainian situation and that level of death. It's almost like the country has a death wish, maybe there's a deep seated guilt for what they did to the Poles and the Jews and the Gypsies and
No,
other
I
people.
think you hit the nail on the head previously.
Ugly.
There is this minority, these Banderite fascist thugs, who are in charge, but they are a tiny minority. But most of the people, I think, are shielded. I mean, remember that the front lines are not accessible even to Western media, especially their own. They just get, this channel called something Visegrad 24, a Polish kind of outlet, which is all about we're winning, we're going to destroy, look at the Vatniks dying. They exclusively get that kind of news, even though I think 60% of respondents in a poll said, family and friends are missing from my life. 60% of them. But they just don't know. So I think it's mostly shielded, but I don't know how long you can actually do that.
I always feel this need to repeat and underscore the tragedy that's going on and the senselessness that is happening because it's not benefiting Ukraine. Ukraine isn't benefiting from this. This was never going to be beneficial for Ukraine. To think that they would be able to defeat Russia has always been a huge lie. It's been a PR, propaganda offensive, and they're literally sacrificing themselves for the interests of wealthy elites that run the West, and it's words fail, but it's senseless, reprehensible, immoral. It's I just get frustrated thinking about it.
Let's talk about that because I'm not sure it is true today. Right now, they are paying with blood to keep Zelensky and his ilk alive, with Blinken's little inner circle. But initially, the sanctions were supposed to bring Russia to collapse. Putin would be out in a Moscow Maidan in a couple of months. And all of those spoils, those natural resources would be Ukraine's, Europe's, divvied up between the empires. That was the initial plan. But ever since those 2 months, and it was obvious that this failed, it has been exactly as sinister as you said. Yeah, we promised you'd defeat them, you'd come up glorious, you'd be the Winston Churchill of our times. But, we failed, but we'll still tell you. Jens Stoltenberg, the Norwegian tailor, the General Secretary of NATO, just today said, this is just the carrot that, never reaches your lips. That he just said that Ukraine has never been closer to NATO membership than today. I mean, what the fuck are you doing? Just keep on fighting. One more hill, 1,000 more dead. Just keep on fighting. You're really close. Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen the new Seymour Hersh article, Real Truth Talk. I'll have to read up on that. If you want to comment, let me know what was in it.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read it either, but my wife has.
Ooh. Rosalie, the unseen star of the show, very knowledgeable. We want to bring her on at some point.
She did talk about Hersh's. He has sources that he can't reveal who assure us that Putin did kill Prigozhin. That's the gist.
Okay,
I see. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's my assumption. 80% that the guy's dead. I mean, he had a funeral and all that. Of course, we can't rule out Russian Maskirovka, as people say.
And to take Scott Ritter's position that it was an accident, or people that Scott added that why would he do it when there's this important BRICS conference going on, and there was another event
and the victory in Kursk. Yes,
that's it. That's it. Yes. Why would he do it then? That's just going to take away from it. Well, for one thing, the BRICS is going to be the BRICS. It's the business is going to get done. That's it. The other one, the Kursk, he could, it's symbolic. He can ride that out, and it would lead to people like Scott, who are very intelligent analysts, provides very intelligent analysis to actually maybe go, well, Putin didn't do it for these reasons, so maybe he can put it over on him. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, reverse psychology, as Real Truth Talk just said. And
what about the collateral damage? There's a bit of collateral damage too, which wouldn't seem like Putin would be.
Yeah, Utkin and the top commanders of Wagner. Yeah.
Maybe there was an opportunity to get the entire leadership, and that's why. So it's all just speculation, but that's interesting. I'll read Hersh's article.
It's also interesting that
Scott and Hersh definitely have a disagreement. I guess they're pretty close friends, but they might disagree on this one.
UK British intelligence was the first to say that the molecular and DNA checking of whatever Prigozhin's body was faked. They want to desperately believe he's alive for some reason. I'm not sure why. We don't have access to at this level.
I mean, you can't rule anything out.
Hey, he's going to run with the JFK Jr. in the next presidential election in the U.S.
Who is?
Prigozhin. He's going to become a U.S. citizen. The QAnon theory that JFK Jr. is still alive, wasn't killed in that plane crash, and it's going to.
Not RFK, JFK Jr.
Yeah, JFK Jr. Yes, he's going to run.
Janis Joplin.
People literally travel around the U.S. to these places where they think JFK Jr. is going to appear. It's going to make an
Oh,
appearance. That's how nutty it's gotten in this world. I mean, it's
do you know,
I mean,
there's another thing. I can't tell if it's just a Russian meme or an actual conspiracy theory that he's been playing Pope Francis and Prigozhin like at the same time. There's never been in the same place at the same time because they have very similar faces. That's just funny, you know.
wow. I love it.
You
What
know,
was,
Carlo's actually never been seen with Santa Claus in the same place as well.
True that.
So it
that's
doesn't
right.
look like the North Pole, but we can't really tell because there's a wall behind him.
That's why I wear this bandana. I got tired of all the kids going, Poppy, Poppy, it's Santa Claus. Yes, it's Santa Claus. So anyway, and another thing I do to entertain myself, and this is just a sidelight, is I when I play on the internet like at 2 or 3 in the morning, I call up the some of the best buffets, say in Spokane, Washington, or the best buffets in Ho Chi Minh City. And by the way, the two
On the
best
internet.
yes, and yes, there's programs, and these guys make a living by going to these buffets and eating this food that I cannot afford to eat. And I'm contemplating doing a program called "For Food I Will Never Be Able to Afford to Eat" on Social Security, and which is absolutely true. Um, the best, closest I come is like my son-in-law's crew. We go to a $11 buffet. You know, it's just hastening my death. But it's interesting because I called up the best buffet in Kiev, and it's really lavish. I mean, it is beyond. It was, I think it was one of the ones that was over $100 a plate, like $150 a plate of a person per person
So
to come
you
in
really
and
called them on the phone?
what's
No,
that?
this is internet
This
browsing,
is
I think.
this is internet. There are programs for
Okay.
all of these places on the internet. In fact, I was watching the best buffet in Spokane, Washington, just last night. It was quite lavish, but it was only 55 or $65. But anyway, in Kiev right now, it's like the Monaco Battalion and all of their yachts on the Riviera. There are people when 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 Biden says or Blinken says they're sending more money to Ukraine, what they're
Here's
meaning,
some French fries. Here's some
yeah,
French fries from McDonald's for that
right,
1
get some
billion.
that kind of home. That's what that's going to be the association you want people to make. People will be going and buying American French fries, and there's a connection. But in reality, all that money is going to be stolen by people
Oh
who
yeah.
go to the best buffet in Kiev.
Hey,
So maybe
speaking
what you should
about
just
food, two little wrinkles that I loved about this. This is part of two stories, but I sort of bring them together. That a lot of these losers are going screaming to the WTO, the World Trade Organization. First one is Ukraine saying if the ban on grain, the European Union, well, not the Union, but basically many countries, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, the Poles, they have banned Ukraine grain imports because they're shit and undermine our farmers. And it ends on September the 15th. And if it's renewed by us, then he is threatening, well, Zelensky and his government is threatening to litigate against the EU at the World Trade Organization. At the same time, Fumio Kishida, Japan's prime minister, is threatening litigation over China, banning its seafood after they dumped the Fukushima wastewater. Sorry, well, we run into a bit of a snag. Our economy is fucked, but we'll run to the World Trade Organization. They'll probably help us out. Is a funny wrinkle to me at this point, really. It's like realpolitik has left, the house. So let's go into these. There's going to be cameras. There's going to be suits, and I don't know what's going to be achieved. But
It's kind of like lawfare. I mean, they're engaging in lawfare. That's it's been a very widely used tactic by the West in the past several decades, using international law, using the criminal courts, using domestic law, using other countries' laws just to, further their interests. But would that be successful? I mean, is the WTO really going to make China,
all the
accept?
sanctions in the world couldn't destroy Huawei.
Yeah.
So what are they?
Yeah.
Come on.
well, the Fukushima thing has had its benefits. They're starting to discover 600-pound shrimp off the shores of Japan.
600-pound shrimp.
Yeah, huge, just huge. People, Oh, its family of 4 can eat for a month.
Wow. Imagine how big the
Oh,
sharks have got.
Did you see the horrible video from the reflexive fucking US puppet, the Australian embassy?
Oh God, yeah.
Did you see that? Yeah. Fukushima Fish and Chips Day. Look, it's lovely. And they were just.
I didn't see that, but that's terrible.
Be glad you missed that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you brought up Huawei. So Huawei is a good topic of discussion. You know, they launched their, what is it, Mate 6? I forget what they called the phone. They didn't announce it. There was no big pre-announcement. Sometimes Apple will announce it, 2 or 3 months in advance and get a lot of anticipation built up. But, China just dropped the phone, and apparently there was some discussion about, what the contents are, how fast is the processor, et cetera, et cetera. So the big question was, because of the Western sanctions, are they going to be using really shitty, old, not very up-to-date tech in their phone? And they were very unhappy to learn that the state-owned Chinese chip manufacturer was able to develop 7nm chips, which isn't as good as the 5nm. So I guess 5nm is cutting technology, and there's a race to 3. But it does have top-of-the-line 7nm, which is way, way, way more advanced than the West thought China could do. So they're very disappointed. There's all kinds of articles lamenting the fact that, hey, our assault on their chip manufacturing has failed because this new phone is freaking phenomenal. And it's got, great 7nm tech from the state-owned Chinese company. In fact, last night, true story, I saw a headline. It was on MSN.com. It said that they were accusing the state-owned Chinese chip manufacturer of not abiding by U.S. sanctions by selling those chips to Huawei. Can you believe that?
Two companies in China, both sanctioned. They avoided sanctions by trading with each other. That's basically what it is. And they're
in violation now. So we have lawmakers investigating the state-owned Chinese company for violating U.S. sanctions by trading with this other Chinese company.
Also sanctioned, yes.
It's a joke.
Absolutely. What grounds do they have to interfere with that kind of
it's just the same as threatening North Korea. What? They've been sanctioned to the ground for decades now. What are you going to threaten them with? But to add more, go.
Well, I was going to say we should add to that story. We should remind people that the United States told Trudeau to kidnap for years, the daughter of the founder of Huawei. What was the ground? What was the justification for kidnapping the daughter of Huawei? The justification was because Huawei allegedly was breaking U.S. sanction law, violating U.S. sanctions against Iran. So the U.S. sanctioned Iran and said nobody can trade with Iran. Allegedly, and Huawei denies it, allegedly Huawei traded with Iran, violated these sanctions, and then guess what? The U.S. tells Canada to kidnap the fucking daughter of the fucking CEO of the company. And they did for fucking 2 years.
And the active CFO, Meng Wanzhou. Yes.
Yeah. And once again, what jurisdiction did they have? I mean, they make up these laws out of whole cloth, and they're supposed to apply to people who don't agree with them at all. Who why would anyone consider those legitimate other than the U.S.? It's like the piracy. It's like stealing other countries' assets.
Exactly like that. They are international pirates. Yeah. The Meng Wanzhou story was, and then China did the China thing, which I really loved, that they looked into what's the legality here in Canada. Oh, it looks like the sovereign is still the fucking British Queen. So we're going to go to the British Queen. And that's how they got her released. Sent a complaint to Westminster. She was still alive at the time. So that was fantastic. But I think people underestimate this story so much because this happened 12 years ago. Gates, who was the DOD, the Pentagon guy who went to China, and immediately on his arrival, they announced and flew the J-20 stealth fighter. And this time, Gina Raimondo was in the country, and apparently not even the higher ups in Huawei know about this very secret project to announce this phone. It went out immediately. Millions bought it. It's out. They're rolling off the assembly lines, and you can get a funny Chinese, back panel to it saying Gina Raimondo approves. They're already making fun of it because it's so fantastic. It's got satellite communications, but I've seen long rights. Our friend S.L. Canton did a few of them, but also one of the heads of the Singapore State University saying that this has never happened in history. As in, this is all, it's supposed to take 10 to 15 years to get to this technology. And it's all, despite the sanctions, all within China, a huge leap forward in just a couple of years, which is ridiculous. I mean, they are celebrating this fireworks. There's memes going around everywhere about the Mate Pro 6 or something like that, which has the what we're talking about is the Kirin chip, which is a domestic Chinese manufactured, locally designed, locally processed, independent of every Western technology and process, 7-nanometer 5G chip. That's what we're talking about. It's massive. It's just massive.
And we can all say we told you so, because it's been apparent from the very beginning that there's no containing China. If they think that they can implement these sanctions and that's gonna keep China from continuing to steamroll ahead, like they're living in a delusion. But what else are they gonna do? They're not gonna capitulate. The West, they're not gonna just surrender. They're gonna give it their best shot, but they don't have a prayer. And and besides, it's impossible, right? It's like turning around the Titanic. How does one, like, if you're a lawmaker that's sensible, say you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, are you going to stick your head up and say, hey, we need to start being nice with China? Like, that's the right thing to do.
But that's the admission of saying we fucked up. They're never going to do that.
Right. And so we have this problem where we're just on this trajectory that we can't get off of. And China, understands, but that's why we have a crisis of leadership. And that's what leaders do. We don't have leaders. We have a class of parasites that runs our country. They own all the political parties. They own all the politicians. They own the industries. And they're not gonna. It's impossible to change something like that because we don't have a real government where we elect our leaders and they make these tough decisions and where they try and bring the people on board. And if anybody tried to stick their head up and do that, they would get their head bitten off. And so no politician is going to do that. They're not going to throw away their career just for the good of the country.
And that's sorry, go, Carlo.
No, that's all you have to do is look at the numbers of scientists and engineers that these countries are producing. China and Russia. Russia is producing almost as many scientists and engineers as the United States, with about 2/3 of the population. China is dwarfing the United States.
Oh yeah, and China dwarfs Russia
combined pretty soon.
Yeah, among those millions, literally millions of scientists and engineers, you're going to have some brilliant minds that are going to do exactly what they've just done. It's just,
by the way,
mathematics and science. It's a common international language. Everybody can learn it.
We just had a physics marathon of the youth, I think university age in Budapest, I think last week, 2 weeks ago, and the Russian team won 4 medals out of the 4 available. They really, and of course, at the beginning of the SMO, like about a year ago, they left the Bologna system, the Western PhD, MD, all of that shit, and going back to basically the Soviet system of education, which was far more efficient and better. So yeah, they are the superpowers, both of these nations in this. And, when you say teachers, scientists, engineers, that's about an overwhelming majority of the ruling party in China, the PC, the Communist Party of China, not the other way around. So yeah, I mean, what I'd like to say in this respect is we always talk about Peter Zihan, and I'd even say Ursula. I'm kind of thankful for them because as long as they say let's just sanction them to oblivion because they're vulnerable, I think the Russian and the Chinese people say bring me more sanctions. It's been healthy for us. It's been a fucking blessing, is what it looks like from the outside.
I just want to say one other thing, going back to the buffets. We're talking about chips here, and chips is the way the British talk about French fries. Yes. They call them chips. Last night, and I think this has significance. Last night I was watching this one guy who's very, very popular, and he was in South Korea, and at one of these very, very expensive buffets, and he had to take several shots at Russia. He was eating Russian caviar, so he had to like take shots at Putin and these little sarcastic things,
Mm.
and then he also took shots at, of course, North Korea. These like political shots in the show. And the other guy I was watching a few days ago, he was the one in Kiev, and he was, of course, taking very very heavy shots. In fact, I mentioned on the show that his sidekick at one point mentioned rather shyly, or um, Ukraine is winning the war. But these guys are obviously in touch with U.S. State Department. Now, I know they get their talking points for their programs from the U.S. State Department,
Mm.
and my suspicion is many of the most popular ones, the ones with the highest technical support, are NGOs operating under the aegis of the State Department USAID, which is the CIA. And they're very popular, and their propaganda is light,
Yeah.
but it's there.
Yeah.
It's
I wish
every
we.
fucking where.
I hope one day we get data about the exact percentage, because a lot of the big YouTubers, use Nord Stream VPN, and then there's a lot of the similar phrases when it comes to Ukraine. Like, it's all been written. I think you're very right about that. Even foodies, even tech people, people in specialized fields, they have very similar takes.
It's
like
it's like a
uncanny.
modern Operation Mockingbird. It's just the 2023 version where social media platforms are being co-opted by the CIA, just like they did with the Washington Post back in the day. I mean, they still do, of course.
They still have to say to this day the unjustified invasion. I mean, I keep hearing it everywhere.
Oh God, yes. If I hear Wolf Blitzer say that one more time, I'm going to drive down to the studio and punch him in the nose.
I was gonna bring up. I read a very
Hi.
good article on Taiwan. I wanted to recommend it to anyone who is listening. It was like 7,000 words. It was published at uns.com, which has a whole bunch of awful articles in there as well, but also a lot of good articles. And the comment section is filled with anti-Semites and white supremacists, but some decent people as well. But he's a publisher. He publishes everything Ron Unz, and a lot of good stuff too. So I mean, I do read what what gets put there. So this article by Wei Ling Chua was about Taiwan and the history of Taiwan. And shoot, there was a particular aspect that I was gonna bring out from the article, and now I've forgotten. You know how that
I think
goes.
it's sort of the preparation, the Ukrainization, isn't it, of the populace? Not successful, but that was a big theme. I just skimmed the article. I haven't read it in depth.
Well, yeah, because there's obstacles to reunification. Oh, I remember what it was. Okay, so my point was going to be that in 2008 we had a big economic crisis that threatened the global economy, and it was really like people were scared, like the wealth, the.
Quick
Wall
side
Street-
note, that's exactly when G20 was born. It was a response to the 2008 economic crisis. Yeah.
G20 was formed subsequent to the economic crisis. Who gets credit for stabilizing that crisis is China.
Absolutely.
So China invested, they like tripled their investment in U.S. bonds and U.S. currency. They bought like $600 billion worth of bonds in order to stabilize the global economy. And Hank Paulson, in one article, gave credit to China and thanked them for doing a large part of stabilizing the global economy and keeping a global crisis that could have really, really had much worse consequences. And that's all China got, was a thank you and an op-ed that probably ran once and then nobody thought of. And
Pat on the head,
what
yeah.
else they got was, a ratcheting up of using Taiwan as a, to attack China, and ratcheting up, Western's support for Taiwan and supporting the independence movement in Taiwan. So the article is really good, 7,000 words. It talks about goes way back in Taiwanese history, talks about all the magnanimous efforts China has gone to in order to, entice Taiwan to reunify peacefully. And I mean, and what they've offered on the table has been the status quo. Look, everything that you have now, you can keep. You can keep electing, like you're going to be they've offered these amazing concessions, and they talk about how Mao wrote Chiang Kai-shek a letter. Mao sent Chiang Kai-shek a picture of Chiang's family cemetery, saying, "Hey, we are taking care of your family cemetery." He said, like 6 members of Mao's family died fighting Chiang Kai-shek. And the magnanimity that Mao told Chiang, hey, we're all Chinese. We need to just make sure we don't allow Taiwan to be an issue exploited by the foreigners. And who kind of agreed with him was Chiang. Unfortunately, the status quo, what's happening right now isn't good. But who's going to win the next election? It's possibly the KMT. And the KMT is Chiang's political party, his legacy, and they are serious about getting rid of the West's efforts to co-opt Taiwan and use it as a weapon against China. So it's so that the elections are coming up, and there's a good chance the KMT will win, and that'll be good things for Taiwanese-Chinese relations. So we can all look forward to that.
Who's running under the flag of the KMT? I think, I hope I got this right, because this is maybe a month old. It was the guy in charge of Foxconn, which is Taiwanese. That's where years ago, what they call suicide nets were, the main assemblies of iPhones and all that shit. So not really mainland China, but the leader of that, the CEO, maybe the founder, he said he's running, and he warns, we cannot become the next Ukraine. I'll never let it. I'll assure peace for 50 years. Now, that was a big message, I think, resonating. That
sounds like a winning campaign. I mean, to anybody that's not suicidal.
And China, suicidal. Yeah, and Chinese officials have said the same at the Asian summit. We should warn the people, not just against the new Cold War and the bloc mentality, but no one should become the next Ukraine. I think.
The article really hits the point home that China is not threatening Taiwan with military invasion. That is a Western propaganda, talking point that they've shoved down everybody's throat. Like, we have to defend Taiwan from Chinese aggression. And she goes point by point, all the magnanimous efforts that China has gone through, way more than any other country would do, to be friends and to have good relations and to have peaceful coexistence and to be, one China. Because guess what? It's the official stance of every country on the planet except maybe 12, and that doesn't include the U.S., that it's one country.
It includes Taiwan, Kosovo, which isn't a country. Yeah.
Say that again?
It includes Kosovo, which is not a country. They officially recognize Taiwan for some fucking reason. Yeah. Because they have a Bill Clinton statue about 3 stories tall. Maybe that's why.
It's weird.
But go, Carlo.
I just wanted to say it's interesting. It's refreshing to hear a different take on investment, whereas the United States sees Ukraine as an investment in taking down Russia, but here in Taiwan, the Kuomintang, they see avoiding another Ukraine as being another way of looking responsibly at investment by not having it completely destroyed.
Yeah, and maybe the Foxconn guy didn't like the fact that
the economy is suffering.
We're going to destroy these chip manufacturing centers before we allow China to take them over.
Yeah. That was the last straw, but even before that, silicon sand exports from mainland China to Taiwan are bad. They're hurting economically because of this strife. between what used to be the same country, the same people. They travel across, have holidays. It's very close. But as I said, I just skimmed the article, but it brings to mind a couple of things. I mean, 2008, another thing that launched or was in the making was, of course, the Belt and Road Initiative. Who was the US president? Remind me, in 2008, Americans. Who was?
Barry O.
Sorry?
Barry O.
Barack Obama, exactly, who coined the phrase pivot to Asia. So that was the reward for saving the US economy, saying, oh, we're going to focus on you, encircle you, and strangle your growth and your... I think there was another article, some sort of business press saying we have to join with the EU to slow down China's innovation. It was before this Huawei breakthrough. But what do you call it? The Global Times, which is the prime magazine of the CPC, they had headlines running just a couple of weeks ago saying, no, we're not going to bankrupt our economy to save yours again. And that they went to about a trillion, about so 900 billion or around a trillion of US treasuries that they bought. And they've just been dumping around 300 billion for months and buying gold. So really that gravy train is over. People in finance at least seem to say this. So no, we're not going to do it again. We got no thanks. Now, I wanted to bring in another topic. It was very interesting to me when you said the Americans cannot. There's a lot of ego in it. Saying we have to stop, we have to have a different strategy means we fucked up. And no one is allowed in the US, if you want to keep your job, you want to remain a senator, to say we fucked up because you're over. It's all about ego. China, when the people had issues with, corruption, they spoke up. They said we fucked up and they fixed it. They said we fucked up with the COVID. We don't talk about it. Lockdowns as well. And they changed policy, and they do this all the time. The same happens in Russia. We fucked up with our little policing thing when we went in because we weren't prepared that these are really wanting to fight a war. They're really bad for us. They're not looking for peace. And we are going to fix. We're going to change. That's what we've been doing for a year. You just don't see anything in the rigid West like that. And a lot of it, I think, is ego and fantasy.
Well, I mean, that's a great point with the fact that these governments that actually, represent the people and take the people's best interests at heart and utilize their understanding of the people's best interest to decide policy, they change their policy and the policy changes. They're not rigid. And they adapt to the people's interests. And the funny thing is that in the West, no matter what policy position China takes or Russia takes, the West condemns it. And then when they do the opposite, then the West will condemn that. So for instance, the West was telling China for a while, hey, you've got to end your zero COVID policy. You got to end your zero COVID policy.
Yeah.
Once they finally ended their zero COVID policy, guess what the West did? The West started attacking the abrupt end to the zero COVID policy and what a big disaster it was, and how it undid all the good that they had done for the years previous, because allegedly, 50,000 people died in the first 3 days of their undoing of the. I mean, literally, that's what the bullshit that you get from the Western press.
You can't win if you're China. Bloomberg had another headline saying that the Chinese economic slowdown, at least they use that, but it's nothing more than that, a hiccup, might have effects on Brussels and Washington. So if you have some economic issues at home, that's also going to be because of China now. The blame game has begun. So when your petrol prices go up, it's got nothing to do with anything. It's China.
And the petrol prices will go up because the Russia and Saudi Arabia just cut production.
Big news. And the famous big G7, the vaunted, Russian price caps. They said it in Reuters. They shelved that idea. They shelved it. I guess they can bring it off the shelf later if they need it. But for now, they just shelved the idea because it's $90 a barrel and 60 was the price cap, and nobody is going to obey it anymore. And
this notion that China's economy has hit a dead end or is in a rut is oversimplification. Hold on, I'm going to say something. Rosalie, I need my battery's running down. There we go. But we ought to talk about the G20.
Well,
India and the G20 and so on.
Do you mean Bharat or India? We don't know which one the name will be. They sent out the invitations to the event to New Delhi, and instead of saying India, they said Bharat.
I don't know what that means particularly. I don't know what the emphasis of that is.
Apparently, it's an ancient name and it's supposed to emphasize pre-colonial pre-slavery things, but I also don't know where to put that. But the more interesting part was the Pakistani news responded that if you're going to abandon the name India, then we might at the UN level, then Pakistan might take it up. So that's going to cause a lot of confusion in Indians, Chinese, and all over the world, I think. But it will be interesting because Pakistan is the region before the partition where that's the Indus Valley, so that would make sense. But they won't know who to hate anymore.
Yeah, and why is India taking the lead? I don't, I don't really see. I don't really understand that positional tactic either.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
people at the Durham, we respect them. They're convinced that this is a move eastward and away from the West. But, Modi penned an op-ed on India Times, his very nationalistic newspaper, and it was all about the global village and equality. It was all about this, when every single campaign this man has run was about division. Again, Muslim against Hindu, this caste against that caste, India against China. It was always like this. And now he's holding this G20 summit this weekend in New Delhi. And apparently he's just drawn these massive, these canvases in front of buildings to hide the slums. Other slums he's just demolished. It's the opposite of the Indonesia, Jakarta. That's where we had the last G20 summit, where it was filled with little Geely smart cars, little Chinese-made cars, because they had a factory there and everything was tidy and cleaned up. So I'm at mixed. I mean, it doesn't seem relevant in the world today, the entire G20. I don't think that, but go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. It's just that my first impulse when I heard that there was an approach to Africa, the AU, the African Union, was this
To be
was
included, yeah.
this was a part on the this was a tactic on the West to co-opt the more recent rising power of Russia and China in Africa.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it behind the scenes, pushing India forward is Russia. So it's clearly not that. Clearly, Russia is eager to have the AU become a member of the G20. So
Mm.
that makes it way out of my. I can't really anticipate what's going on here.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
It's a
so
mystery.
what file type do I need to save images as to be able to upload them here?
I
What
have
file
not.
type? Because the JPEG doesn't work. They say invalid file type.
Are you trying to present as a slide or something? Because I just shared
Yeah.
my screen, but
Well, I want to upload an image from my computer, but when I try, it says invalid file type. So I can save it as any kind of different file. There's JPEG,
try PNG. I'm not sure.
PNG. Okay, let me try PNG. Let's see if that'll work.
If not, drop it on me on chat and I can share it on my left screen.
Okay.
Because that's a big story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where this. India initiated this process of the African Union becoming part of the G20. Am I correct on that? That's India.
Yeah, did they though? Did Russia goad them into it?
That's the thing. Too many
Yeah,
question marks.
I'm curious. Obviously, the CIA has stepped up its war against the rogue ECOWAS states, and people are being murdered right and left by Boko Haram in Burkina Faso, for one that I know of, and so the U.S. is going to play its usual role of destroying any ability for Africa to and especially the Western Sahel to really capitalize on these new gains with the four countries, the four francophone countries abandoning France. So this morning I read that the United States is eager to take over the role of France, which obviously that was part of the
Looks
plan.
like it. And did you?
So
I
yeah,
sent you a quick link just this hours before this meeting from Narishkin, who was the Russian military intelligence guy, who apparently has information that the U.S. is contemplating executing the Niger coup leaders now. That
right.
was a big.
I did read that. Yeah, actually, from your cheat sheet. Yeah, or from
Yeah.
your email. Yeah. So it's obvious that the old colonial role is still alive and well. So what the G20 would gain, I mean, what the African Union would gain in the G20 is suspicious to me because the African Union is essentially a conglomeration of elites from all of these African countries, many of whom are just padding their own pockets
Mm.
with by aligning with the West. And I mean, we Tinubu, his election has just been confirmed. Yet this in the face of he being exposed as a money launderer, and all that there were literally millions of dollars in bribes that passed hands from Western corporations, including U.S. corporations, to elites in Nigeria, and it's like the old corruption is just still floating there, very much alive, very much in place, and able to do real damage to places like Burkina Faso, which is 40% under Boko Haram control right now. So, not a pretty sight. But I don't know if they can hold out or not. This is why I say China and Russia, they just have to step up. They have to step up. You know, there should be. I mean, I hate to say this, but if there's Wagner still around, put Wagner in Niger. Put more Wagner in Burkina Faso if they're already there. Just put them there. I mean,
I don't know how Ben was able to do that so quickly. I was struggling for the last 10 minutes trying to figure out how to get these historic predictions about China. But no, Carlo, you brought up, I'm sorry to change the subject.
no, that's all right. Go ahead.
I agree with you on the Africa situation. The more that Russia and China step up, obviously, the better. And they are, but you also said that there's this false narrative out there of, China's impending collapse. And it's been really pushed down our throats recently. You can't look at any website. Newsweek had a big article, and I even did a little bit of research about that author. Like, how can he say this ridiculous stuff and still have a job? Like, I don't understand. But
That's how they still have a job. I've seen a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at, these only go back to 1990. I have seen a different version that goes all the way back to like 1979. And they all say the same thing. It's like, hey, China's about to collapse. Like they're impending. And you wonder what the point is. Like, are you trying to deter Western investment? Is that what you're doing? Because before 1990 or before 2000, at least, they were encouraging people to go to China because, you could make way more money in China. But once they realized they weren't going to be able to co-opt China politically, that's when the narrative kind of changed, and they don't want people to, now it's decoupling or de-risking, as they're saying. They want everybody out. But China's, it's too good of a market. No self-respecting capitalist is going to want to not do business with China. But yeah, look at this. So, and it did not end at 2017. Again, if you go to any mainstream website like MSN.com, you will see 2 or 3 articles stating outright that China is about to collapse. And of course, Peter Zehan is the one of the main promoters of this nonsense on social media. You got Gordon Chang, the main promoter of this nonsense on the establishment press. I just saw him interviewed by Fox News yesterday. And they even promoted his book, China's impending collapse. But guess when his book was written? You stupid motherfucker. 2001. Like, you're a fucking moron. This is the disgraced Gordon Chang, the laughing stock Gordon Chang. And yet he still comes on, hailed as an expert, a China expert. These are the kind of experts that the West shoves down our throats. They're not experts. They're expert liars. They just tell you the narrative. And even the fact that they're wrong over and over and over again, that just means that, they're gonna promote them even more, unfortunately. So I hope everybody got a look at that.
It's a good predictions,
and I hope they know to ignore these headlines. China's about to collapse. So the truth is, and I shared the truth a couple shows ago about over the past 3 years, including the COVID, how they've just outperformed the U.S. by 2.5, by a factor of 2.5, and some countries by like 400. Like Great Britain has really gone bad, and so they've outperformed Great Britain by like 400 times, 500 times.
So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's take a look at the flip side. What about I've heard Doug McGregor and other pundits say, well, the U.S. economy is in free fall, in collapse, and they give their reasons for that. Is it genuinely in free fall? I mean, you know,
Not
six,
according to the numbers, but this financial year, which I think means early 2005. I'm not sure how that works. Quarter one, quarter two, but this financial year it took like, I don't know, 100 years to reach 1 trillion debt, and this financial year it will reach 2 trillion. If that's not like a massive castle made out of cards. I mean,
How many years post the 1 trillion milestone did we reach 2 trillion?
very, very quick. That's all I could say. I don't remember when the big,
like a handful of years. It took 100 to get to trillion, and what, 2 or 3 to get to 2 trillion.
something like that. It's exponential, and I don't see any sane or reason. I mean, Angelo Giuliano makes this very fine point that in China you don't have all these excess fat, meaning a lawyer sending another lawyer a letter adds to the GDP, or you having a consultation with a whatever fuck adding to the GDP. I mean, if you look at India, it's supposed to outperform China by gross GDP alone, but you don't look at home ownership, you don't look at wealth ownership. Apparently 40% of the wealth of India is tied up in the 1%, the richest 1% of the people, and the bottom 50%, scarily similar to the US, by the way, own about 6% of the total wealth of India. I mean, that's not China. I mean, Xi Jinping said that China's economy is an ocean, not a pond. So if a real estate business has to fail, it's going to fail. We are ready. We can absorb this. They plan 5-10 years into the future. And these Gordon Chang idiots, these people, it's a lot of wishful thinking. They want in China what they had with Boris Yeltsin in Russia. Corruption gone rampant, poverty, but billions to be made for foreign investors buying up resources on the cheap. It's mostly that sort of wishful thinking.
Turns out, I think the U.S. is being buoyed by the collapse of Europe and by European money and industries coming to the U.S. as a safe haven, and so I think the U.S. economy isn't doing nearly as bad as Europe, and it's because Europe is deteriorating.
And it's by design, very conniving. You destroy the Nord Stream pipeline, and then you charge Europe 5 times what they were paying for their liquid natural gas from U.S. firms, so that U.S. firms are like cash rich and making a lot of money, and that you always have the notion of trickle down. But yeah, it's just that much was made about the war in Ukraine driving prices up and that sort of thing. But I don't see an enormous strain, and I don't see the general population be that strained or put out by the way the economy is right now, which is horrifying to contemplate, because that means that that a walking corpse Biden may be in a position to be reelected. That's a nightmare, because he'd just millions of people are dying at his hand. His palsied, crippled hand.
I wanted to bring up a picture exactly in the veins of what you were talking about, and I think this says it all. I don't know if I sent you this or it was in a Telegram chat with people, but this guy, a demented old man, is saying a future made in America, and that is a German company opening up a plant in California because their fucking energy pipeline got blown up and energy prices are in the sky, so they moved to America because this guy blew it up, and now he's celebrating a future made in America. I thought this was picture of the year material,
That's that you describe it very well. I mean, that's exactly what happened.
That's GDP wealth, baby. It's so ridiculous.
So I don't know, domestic politics. I can't imagine, that they want Biden for another 4 years. You would think they would, figure something else out But if they don't, if they need more time, he's definitely not going to end. He's not going to finish his next term. They're gonna give him a VP that they're gonna put in power. And I said the exact same thing before this election. So I'm going to cop to it. Like, I was wrong. I said there's no way Biden can be the 4-year president, and it looks like he's going to be. But I will double down and I will say that there is no way he can be another 4-year term president. Like, as improbable as this one was to me, like the next one is just like no way. So if they don't figure something else out before the election, as far as who's going to be their heir apparent, they'll have to do it in the middle of his next term, because he can't do another 4 years after 2024.
So
you guys are with me on that, right?
The thing is, though, they have staffs. They have staffs. Look at Mitch McConnell. He's been a walking corpse for a while now.
What did he? 5 or 6 seconds he froze again, and then the official physician cleared him. He's absolutely fine, just like the president. Well, that's the problem. I don't think he's fine.
No, my paradigm for that is Truman. I mean, Truman had national security advisor was a man named Jimmy Burns, and Jimmy Burns, for virtually all of Truman's political career, led him around by the nose.
Yeah,
even
Reagan, of course,
dropping
had
the bomb,
handlers.
even at dropping the atomic bomb is
well.
So they're the strengths of their staff. So Mitch McConnell's staff is very, very strong.
But the thing is, I mean, Biden has to walk up and down stairs. Like, he can't do that for another 4 years. That's what I'm saying. Like, they can, of course, they don't make any decisions, and I'm not saying that, but I mean, I'm saying it's going to be impossible. He's going to be on a ventilator, a respirator. So, you can't have a head of state like that.
Well, in the horror movies, they just cut off his head and they put it in a little stand,
Just to
with liquids going in and out. And he could probably run the country like that, given if he has a strong enough staff.
I tell you what, 2 pieces of news now make sense to me. Both the EU's Ursula are talking about we are going to fund the Ukrainian project for years or decades to come, and we're going to do a 5-year plan or whatever for this kind of money to go there. And Blinken did the same in Kiev. I think they're trying to future-proof this project. Whoever is president, this shit has to go on. Now it makes sense to me. I mean, I don't think they trust that Mr. Biden will be back. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. That's just a meme I thought I'd share because it's funny how people age. Poor Germany. That's the German economy right there, the bottom picture. Those poor people.
Well, my personal opinion is, if whoever it is, the election is going to hinge on how much minorities and the certain aspects of the general population hate and fear Trump. And that's what got Trump not elected. That's what got Biden elected, because Biden was not anybody's first choice.
Yeah.
It was basically an election. I'm scared to death of what Trump might do and the chaos he might bring, whether it was manufactured by the media or there was any real substance to it. And I think both came into play. So I don't really follow.
I agree with you that there's a lot of powerful people scared to death of Donald Trump. I'm not sure why you are, but again, I'm the outsider here. You're the American.
No, I'm not, from a completely different reason, because I know that the wealthy people don't give a rat's rectum about what happens to the general population, especially African Americans and Latinos. I see that firsthand every day. But it's a completely different mindset from the wealth generating the people who have huge amounts of wealth. They don't want to see Trump because he could be bad for business, and their business in particular. Now it's a competition between the billionaires that support Trump and their businesses, like the Koch brothers, who are have a huge investments in in
compared
oil
to
and
them,
natural
he's small
gas.
money.
Yeah. So they, as long as Trump does their bidding and sort of, he gave a huge tax break, the military industrial complex, the Congress voted in what was it, $934 billion or something, and then Trump gave them another 34 billion on top of that. They didn't even ask for. So they're all so they're perfectly happy to have Trump uh, from that dimension, but they're also very wary that he might step out of line.
Yeah,
Uh,
upsetting some world order things, like
well,
Korea.
yeah, I mean he's all
Peace
talk.
with Russia.
I mean,
That was one of
what
the
I would
things.
want to know is I would love to see him bring the Koreas together. How? I would love to see him end the war in Ukraine. How? You know, I haven't had
I
heard
think he
one.
was halfway there. He almost did it when he was undermined by the Boltons in the swamp that well, he called it
Well,
swamp. But the permanent state. Look, Vladimir Putin said in I think the 2010s that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. The permanent state, that's his words, behind them are rigid and unchanging, and that's why the U.S. is agreement incapable. You
yeah,
know.
but I mean that's like tossing off the notion that just Trump saying that he can do these things. He didn't do anything. The guy was going to bring back industry, didn't bring back squat. The guy was going to, close the borders with a wall, didn't build the wall. I mean, and it was a half-assed effort.
So is
Uh,
this an argument that he's incompetent because he's a game show host and
he
basically
does.
a
He's
playboy millionaire,
he's not engaged.
not
He's
engaged?
only interested in his ego when he's there. He's not engaged in any real um um real governance. He not doesn't give a rat's rectum about government governance. He doesn't care. You look at his desk. There's never a paper on the desk. He reads nothing. The only thing that's on his desk is another Diet Coke, and he has a little button he presses on his desk, and some lackey brings him in a fresh Diet Coke. He doesn't read anything.
So
He watches TV all day.
is he better than Biden?
Well, it's hard to gauge. I mean, Biden is a stooge of the very rigid class you were talking about, and he will do their bidding, and he will happily do their bidding as long as he's sentient.
It's not a monolithic class. There are divisions in the elite, and you know this as well.
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
wondering
know that there are
because I try
divisions,
to avoid this
but
conversation, but as long as we're in it, are you on the Cornell West wagon?
no, I would never. I mean, if the, he if he reaches up and points to God one more fucking time, somebody should slap him silly. He's fucking in
Thank
this.
you, thank you.
He's fucking in this seminary in New York, and it's full of Ukrainians. It's Ukrainian nationalists. It's full of that Seventh-day Adventists and ninnies like that who left Russia because they supposedly were persecuted when they were doing all this underhanded
And
shit.
he says the same things that the MAGA crowd and Trump, they're the white supremacists, the actual Nazis. He says this stuff without a flinch, and that's why I was like, "What's wrong with you, man?"
But there's these that, but
I
no,
heard
but
he was on
Cornell
Jimmy
West.
Dore yesterday,
I,
and it didn't go so well. But I haven't seen the video yet.
but anyway, the thing is, it's you talk. What point do I what why does it mean my even talking about it when I have exercised no power?
Mm,
And that's the point. They exercise real power, real
you're
power,
right. You're right about that.
and
Who selects?
that's an enormous difference from me. I don't exercise any power, none.
True. But some people trying to bury an actual candidate who was president, I think that's a big deal in history, and it will have
Well,
repercussions years from now,
I
whether you
have
like him or not.
no. I laugh when I listen to Max Blumenthal or Jimmy Dore go on about how they're really going after Trump. It's terrible, and it's going to have ramifications. Yeah, all you
I'm
have to do is look at January 6th, and
I'm Team Jimmy and Team Max on this one. I'm
but
sorry.
if you watch the tapes on January 6th, it's not a normal day down at the Capitol. I've been down the fucking Capitol 1,000 times. Well, 100 times.
Look,
Taping taping
Let me
demonstrations.
can
Some of
we
them
just
with large crowds.
let's not
That
get that
never
heart attack
happened before.
on air today? What do you think?
I'm
so.
sorry, what?
This is it's an article from Mike Whitney from I don't know 2021 or 2020, but our friend of the show Patrice de Barricaps at the Greenville Post recently reposted this Mike Whitney article. But the very beginning kind of alludes to the question that Ben asked. What's more dangerous? So, which of these two things poses a greater threat to the country? So we have option A or option B. Option A, an incompetent and boastful president who has no previous government experience and who is rash and impulsive in his dealings with the media, foreign leaders, and his critics.
Trump.
Or a political party that collaborates with senior level officials in the intel agencies, the FBI, the DOJ, the media, and former members of the White House to spy on the new administration with the intention of gathering damaging information that can be used to overthrow the elected government.
And silencing people on the internet and everywhere.
Yeah, but look, that's apples and oranges. One is international, the other's domestic. Trump is on the domestic side, and the CIA and the deep state is on the international side. That's where their bread is really buttered, on exploiting the world. And Trump, he's on the domestic side because he's exploiting fellow Americans for his own personal gain. That's why under his watch, so many African Americans were disenfranchised from the vote. Now they consider it important to vote. They lost lives and worked hard to gain the vote. And Trump was systematically taking away from it. Now he has this fucking goddamn Supreme Court that doesn't care. They'll take it away from. They'll take everything away from them. And you got this ninny in Florida and this other ninny in Texas where they just closed down. You go from 18 polling stations where African Americans live to one polling station, so nobody can get in to vote. You can't go to a polling station where it's 100 degrees heat in Florida and give somebody a bottle of water without being arrested. Yeah, oh yeah, that's democracy. That's Trump's democracy, but has nothing to do with stealing resources from Africa. That's a different game. So that question, or the way he posed it, is stupid. It's one of the
most. Do you follow any of Carlos' logic, Ben?
Because I don't know how he's distinguished them, because both presidents have foreign and domestic policies, and they are night and day. But
yeah, but
Carlo,
the guy
I understand where you're coming from.
He just separated them himself. He did the separation. I didn't do it.
Look, Trump was arresting people for not letting him give water bottles out. I mean, that hasn't been something that's been going on long before Trump. That's a Trump initiative.
No, it hasn't, because before it was legal to do it. Now it's illegal.
Did the Republicans engage in gerrymandering?
That was something DeSantis pushed.
I'm not sure this.
Why are you bringing it up? I don't understand the relevance.
Because that's the kind of thing that Trump encouraged.
Trump encouraged DeSantis to pass this legislation.
Absolutely. Yes, let me explain it to you.
George Bush would have opposed it. George Bush would have opposed it.
No, it's so.
Trump is way worse than any Republican.
Trump got votes by doing the similar things, the same things. So
I'm sorry, we're pushing your buttons.
I can get votes by doing those kind of things too. And Trump did dozens of those things. Closed down polling stations.
But is he any different in doing that than anybody that became before him?
Yes, very much so. Yes, very much so.
George Bush wouldn't have stooped to those levels.
Even Reagan, he was worse than Reagan. Worse than Reagan in doing that. The worst. I have never seen the fear and disgust in minorities' faces than I saw when Trump was around.
That doesn't sound like a real objective measure.
I don't care what you think. That's about that. That's what I saw.
And that's
what the vote revealed. That's what the vote revealed. 93% of African Americans who voted for Biden.
Well, great. Now we're here with Biden. I'm glad all I have to clean up is Hungary. Fucking hell.
Yes, that's the international domestic divide. The people here, if you're black and you're here, you're afraid for your own well-being, and they are every fucking day. They don't care about. They don't even know how to parse Ukraine. They don't give a rat's ass about Ukraine. They don't care. They're trying to live. They're trying to get by without being harassed by the police, killed by the police, you know, pulled over by the police, which I see every day. Every day, just blocks from my house. Some poor African American kid handcuffed to the sidewalk, pulled over by the police. It's endemic, you know. And they don't have fucking They don't give. You guys have the luxury of reading all that shit. They don't have the luxury.
I don't want you to have a heart attack live on show. So
no, I don't care. Because
I've heard that. I don't care. You don't care about what we say.
Shit.
Okay.
You know?
What are you doing other than yelling into the camera? This is just
this is substance. This is real substance. This is genuine substance. I'm trying to hammer it through your guys' heads. It's real substance.
And every time white MAGA people reach out a hand to the black people, people say, "Oh, but he wants to kill you. He wants to tie you to a lamppost." And there you go. No unity. No across.
What MAGA people want to reach out their hand?
There's a lot of people who say,
"What MAGA people?"
Yo, you hate Jackson Hinkle. I know that you do. And he is saying,
listen, I can't afford a $200 haircut. So as a not a communist, but as an avowed socialist or whatever I am, I can't stand anybody that spends all that money and pampers himself and says the point of his existence is to get known. He's
making waves, making the word communism trend, and your issue is that he has nice hair. That's
what I'm saying.
I'm thinking
that's the way you can belittle that all you want, but that's very telling to somebody like me.
Okay.
You know, I'm living on $12,000 a year. I don't fucking want to hear it. Survival is optimal. Optimal here. I don't want to fucking hear this shit about Jackson Hinkle. You know, fuck him.
Yeah, that is an obstacle to discussion because every time we try to, you explode.
Yeah, why is it him that they're listening to? Why would anybody listen to a Jackson Hinkle?
Everything he says finally makes sense to a lot of people who have been exactly the same as the rich men north of Richmond that people try to drag down now. It's the working class hymn. We're sick of this, the shitty jobs, the shitty promises, and we're still living.
Yes, but they brought it on themselves. They brought it on themselves. They were anti-union. They were anti healthcare. They were anti.
All right, I'm sorry, viewers. It seems I love the American working people more than Carlo does, but this is repetitive and I think a little bit circular. What do you guys think of winding it?
It's important to discuss this. It's really important to discuss this and to discuss it over and over and over again. Because you guys don't get it.
I don't think this is a discussion.
Like the immigration thing. They did the immigration thing. We hate immigrants. Yes, but you supported the foreign policy that eventually brought the immigrants here. We have Regis on his show. His son is in the Green Berets for 8 fucking years in Afghanistan. Why are there Afghanistan immigrants now? Because the United States fucked up Afghanistan. If you can't think that through, you know, what's the point of your living? You might as well shoot yourself in the head because you're already brain dead.
Well, dear Americans, the message is you brought this on yourself.
Fucking nonsense.
In any kind of actual discussion, you know, any kind of intelligent adult discussion.
The actual discussion. These people aren't smart enough to have an actual discussion.
There's going to be two positions. And it's difficult to, have your position if the other person isn't going to allow you to define your own position. Like if the other person is going to insist that your position is X, when you don't agree with that.
That's what you do to me. Every time you say, Carlo, don't yell at me, you start your comment after I talk with what Carlo means to say or what Carlo meant to say. You do that over and over again. And of course, yes, I jump in because you do that. No, you don't get it right, what I meant to say. You inevitably get it wrong. So yes, I'm going to jump in. You don't get it right.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. You can't tell me what I said. That's why I jump in on your comments.
Well, and I wasn't talking about your jumping in. I was just saying, generally speaking, we have to agree on each other's positions. We have to have agreement that I understand where you're coming from. Let me say it like this. Is this what you're saying? So we understand. And then we can have like an actual discussion. But I think there's limitations to how far we can progress with this discussion, because I don't think you're allowing us to maintain our positions, and it seems like you're straw manning us, and then you say that we straw man you, and we can definitely have that discussion. Like, what do you think we think your position is, and how is that different from your actual position? Because I can tell you that I have my actual position, and I think the position you try and ascribe to me is not my actual position.
Well,
So
of course, I'm not trying to describe your position at all. I'm talking about the reality on the ground. That's your assumption. I never attribute it to you. I'm attributed to the reality on the ground. That's
Okay,
the difference.
So your position is that
my position is this is reality. This is what's actually happening.
We have our own opinions about reality, and so we can discuss how my view of reality is different from your view of reality, and we can discuss the differences, and we can scrutinize which perspective more closely aligns with actual reality. That's a discussion we can have, but we never do.
We could if you guys weren't coming out of some kind of namby-pamby future that's never existed, some Pollyannish Gilligan's Island.
You want to play that game?
Is going to get together with the communists.
At least our clock
and they're going to reach out to all the black people. God damn!
Stop in the 1970s.
What are you, 5 years old? You got to grow up.
Yeah, now you crossed the line because
I don't give a fuck.
Well, okay, this is what you want. You want to yell fest because I don't.
Yes, I just want to yell. I'm so sick of this naivete. You people sound like children.
Now we're your people. Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlo's message is you did this to yourself. You have no one to blame. That's not my message to America, and
they did do it to themselves.
Yeah.
During the Vietnam War, you walked down the street with my hair, the hard hats beat you up. They did it to themselves.
Decades have passed.
You coward! You don't want to go to Vietnam. You coward.
How about that? How about
they did it to themselves? Yes, they did it to themselves.
Our positions, okay. I mean, it seems like Ben and I would like to improve things somewhat, and it doesn't seem like that's what you want to do.
And you're going to create a disaster.
Yeah, okay, let's not try
it.
By trying to
go right
things,
ahead.
We're going to make things worse.
I don't care. I won't be around to see it. Don't care. It'll be me and Newton predicting the end of the world, the year 2060. We'll be long gone.
But would you agree with that framing, that me and Ben would like to improve society somewhat, and you have no interest in attempting to doing that? Is that fair?
I'm not prove that at all. See, you're putting words in my mouth again. That's exactly why that's why I blow up at you all the time.
Okay, well, that brings the question, like, okay, would you like to improve things somewhat with us?
No,
I mean, not even with us.
I don't agree with one thing you said. I don't deal with childlike notions that you have.
Wow.
So you don't want to engage in my question do you want to see society improved or not?
No, it's childlike.
That's an empty question. That's a trope.
Yes or no question.
That's an empty question.
It's a discussion point.
No, it isn't. It's an empty trope. It's empty. What does that mean? You want to see society improved? To a white supremacist, the improved society is all the black people being killed.
Right. Are they in the room with us?
Are we white supremacists?
I don't know. You seem to embrace them without really even having any understanding what you're embracing. You might be. I don't know. I've never entertained the notion because I think it's absurd on the face of it. But maybe, who knows? What do I know about you? I don't know anything about you.
I mean, we're not white supremacists, Carlo.
Oh, okay, well, that's reassuring.
I'm just, I'm wondering, like, why don't you want, like that's the thing. Like, we're trying to have a discussion. I'm asking you, would you like to see society improve somewhat? And then if you would say yes, like most normal people, then we'd ask you, well, how do you think we can do that? And then we can have a discussion. And because me and Ben have ideas about how we can improve society, and you seem to be attacking us and denigrating us for our efforts and our wanting to improve society. And so we're countering, like, well, what about you? You don't want to see society improve somewhat? And if you do, which
my job is not to, I already explained to you, I don't have any power. And my notion
it's not about you having power. It's
yes,
about
it does. That's what it comes down
about
to.
Your perspective, your opinion.
You're
You know, your
informing people.
advocacy.
You're
That's all,
informing people on a political show. You have that much power, and you don't seem to do anything with it.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah,
That's
it
not
is.
the opinion of the few listeners we have.
Okay, it just seems like nihilistic and fatalistic. There's nothing you could do.
Yeah,
Why
because it involves history. Because it's the history right up until yesterday. Basically, what happened? You know, a couple of weeks ago, guy goes in and blows 3 African American people away. He's got swastikas all over his rifle. And he's got
Do you want to see
Trump
that?
paraphernalia all over his fucking
don't
house.
you think I want to
Happen less?
end that?
Would you like to have that kind of thing happen less?
No, I'm not saying you guys want that to happen, but I'm saying your position is pretty innocent and pretty naive, very childlike.
So
Okay,
what
we got that.
position? Like what specific position are you referring to?
This notion that there's some reaching out to these people who every step of the
Who are
way
these people?
they're now complaining. Listen, they're now complaining about their economic condition according to you. Well, the only people they have to blame is themselves.
Who are these people?
Who the general white population that you seem to want to embrace.
The
So the
white
general
population we shouldn't
they
reach
don't
out to.
deserve to be embraced and
MAGA people, for example, or people who are on that side of the spectrum.
They should be cancelled?
My uncles, for example. Now they are all gone. So my cousins, got dozens of them.
So I just, I don't, if you want to paint all white people as racist.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm just telling you what the general trend is when Trump was in power.
So I think the general white population opposes when black people are murdered because they're black. I mean,
yes, but they don't vote for Trump. They don't vote for Trump. They vote for Biden, of all people. They don't vote for Trump. Jesus Christ. Racists vote for Trump. Ask Dust. We got to have Dust on the show. Dust
I should have invited him. It would have maybe been better. I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah,
Wait,
this idea that only racists vote for Trump and white people.
I mean, the percentages are very high. Let me put it to you that way. Jesus fucking Christ. You got to give me that.
How many people do you think are white supremacists that think that, white people are superior to black people, just genetically?
I think the vast majority, even liberals, think that white people deep down are superior. I have a friend, his great friend, and a great radical, helped me with a TV show. And he said, every morning I have to wake up and remind myself that as a white person, I am not superior to anyone else. That's how ingrained it is. God rest his soul.
So apparently this condition since the 1960s is incurable and we shouldn't try to touch base with these people. What is your proposal then?
Well, the thing is, you're not touching base. What you got to do is you got to say, look, the situation you're in, if you really have grievances, it's your own fault.
Yeah, that's
look back to what you did. Look back to the way you listen. They want to complain about the swamp. Who voted these people into the swamp? They did.
I think you explained that you had zero power even with your vote just recently.
Especially in the Midwest, where the vast majority of the voters are white, middle and upper middle class people. They vote these creeps, these criminals, to come to Washington over and over and over. They only have themselves to blame. If they have no health care, they only have themselves to blame.
Okay, since my ideas have been called childish, I would like to say that is a very childish way to look at it, since you already said that your vote is zero power and the people who select the people who are candidates have the real power. Now you're blaming people for the power they don't have. That looks childish to me.
But it is dependent upon a vote.
No, it's just Jordan Peterson. Whatever happened to you, it's your damn fault.
And they don't have the discrimination to know after 50, 100 years that these people just come here and fuck them over.
So I have
their
empathy.
fault.
I have empathy for.
That's their fault. They got to learn. After a while, you can't blame it on black people. You can't
But I
blame it
also
on
have
black people
empathy for
anymore.
white people.
You can't do
I
it.
mean,
That's what they've done
white
for
people are also
237
indoctrinated,
years.
and they endure the same exact kinds of, cradle to grave propaganda offensive aimed at confusing them and, manipulating them that we all do in this country. I mean, that affects everyone. So I have empathy for them. And I don't, sure, they bear some responsibility for not knowing any better than they do. But at the same time, what am I going to, what is my relationship going to be to them? Is it going to be to want them to kill themselves, or is it going to be to want them to improve themselves, develop a better understanding, and, be a positive force in this country, be in society to improve themselves. So that's what I want for them. And I understand that some of their positions, some of their thoughts, some of the ways that they perceive reality aren't going to be accurate. And sometimes they're going to be racist. Sometimes they're going to be, discriminatory based on religion or sex. They're not going to be perfect fucking human beings, but that doesn't mean that they should die, that they're fucking worthless, that we're going to write them off as subhumans.
Who
and
said
racist!
that? Who
Kill
said
them! They're racist! Like that attitude.
Who said they're going to? Who said they're not going to be perfect? Who expects anyone to be perfect? You say all these
Carlo,
things, they don't make any sense. You don't make any sense. You don't make any goddamn sense.
Okay, guys, I think we have to wind it down.
Yeah. So hey, we let it go.
No, leave me up.
We went uncensored.
I have more to say
for about a good 15 minutes here. So
I have
we don't have
far more to say.
I'm okay if you leave Carlo up.
I have a lot to say about that. The perfect people, and you're gonna explain. You explain what you want to explain to them, and then they'll kill you. They'll try to kill you. That's been the history of this country.
Okay, again, I'm glad I'm in Hungary, because just looking at the two of you, I wouldn't like to clean up the USA.
So yeah, I mean, it's like
I don't really understand what your problem is with this. I really don't.
And I don't want to let loose on you why I think this is a very mistaken line of reasoning. I'd like to say to whoever sticked around this long for this shouting shit fest, I will one day, but not live. This shit fest, thank you for bearing with us. Please like, share, and subscribe, or whatever.
I hope you learned something, people.
No.
All right.
Unfortunately,
we'll
that
wrap
wasn't
it up.
teaching.
Maybe we'll continue behind in the whatever that's called, the lobby. All right, guys. Bye.